Hey Bun, so today I wanted to answer the question, can you really play Final Fantasy 14 however you want? Like, how much freedom do you actually have in the game? At what point does this so-called social contract get in the way of you living your life and doing what pleases you? At what point does that turn into griefing of other people? It's like, as the saying goes, the Bun is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. It's like a very melodramatic way of saying that other people might have basic expectations of you, and, certain situations may call for even higher expectations. Are you chained down by the harassment policy of Final Fantasy 14 or the bare minimum expectations of others, or conversely, even their impossibly high expectations? This can sometimes be the case. I think that there is a whole spectrum here that runs the gamut from, total freedom and solo play all the way to enormous social pressure that you might experience in very high-end content. But solo stuff really is no pressure. Like duty support dungeons and trials, trust dungeons, your adventure squadron, if you have that puts you with AI bots to run content with you. Like, it doesn't matter how you treat them. Oh my god, it sounds horrible to say that. It sounds really bad to say. I have seen Westworld. Okay, I know how that can pan out for me. I feel like if there's going to be a robot uprising, I'm going to be one of the first to be taken out, because I've been a little bit toxic in my duty support dungeons with the AI bots, like pulling as many mobs as I possibly can, running way ahead as the DPS just to see if they can handle it, like just for fun, walking away or alt-tabbing while they're clearing out packs, like doing stuff I would never, ever, ever do in a normal party. But some people actually do treat other players like that. Like, they actually walk into a dungeon with the mindset of, I'm going to do what I want. You don't pay my sub. And that's wild to me. But I wonder if maybe as more things become soloable, more of those people will just stick to the solo content where that attitude is perfectly fine, because they're not bothering anyone. No one cares what you do in solo content. And there is already so much solo content in the game. Like, if you hate even thinking about how other people will react, you have no interest in accommodating other people in the slightest, then look into the trust dungeons, the duty support, the crafting, gathering, gardening stuff, housing, island sanctuary coming soon, Criterion dungeons you'll be able to do solo soon, glam farming you can do. There's plenty of blue mage spells that you can hunt down solo, Heaven's Ward relics, Realm Reborn relics, side quests, New Game Plus, like the list goes on and on. And if you want something hardcore, there's obviously Deep Dungeon. That's my current obsession, and it's not because I'm antisocial, wanting to only do solo Deep Dungeon because I don't want to interact with other people. It's just that it's something fun that I can do without adhering to anyone else's schedule, because being considerate of others doesn't just mean, being nice to them, listening to them, not trolling or griefing them, but it can also mean just having the time to commit, to do things within a certain amount of time. And if you have to quit halfway in the middle of a duty support dungeon or a trust dungeon, it's fine. Like, you can just leave, and which is to say, there is no commitment. There is no obligation on you. And that's an incredible level of freedom that I'm happy exists in the game, and is sometimes necessary depending on what you got going on in your life, right? So that brings us to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, the next level of expectation, which is above zero. It's above the zero level, which is solo content, but it is the bare minimum whenever you enter any kind of multiplayer content in the game, party content. Like, if you make that choice to do stuff with other players and not use trust, you are taking on the responsibility towards other people, like a tiny bit. But it is some tiny, small amount, even in the most casual content, like not going in there as a one button Andy, assuming it's not Copper Hell and you have more than one button to use, right? But not intentionally making other people's lives harder, not doing any damage, not just spamming Blizzard, not being an ice mage, right? In a story dungeon, in a normal raid or normal trial, you should expect to be giving, like, not even 100%. I mean, if you want to, that's great, but like 50, 60, 70% effort at least. Like, maybe on a bad day, you could give 40% effort. I doubt anybody would even notice. Not saying that you should do that, but my point is that there is a lot of very casual content in the game that is not asking a whole lot, and yet griefing still happens in there all the time. Like, I'm sure everybody has a story about it. It's not as common as in some other games, but it does happen. Like seeing somebody have a hissy fit in the most casual content, or deliberately making things harder for others on purpose. I bring this up because I think a lot of these cases of people griefing is not because they are too lazy to follow the social contract of basic decency that is expected, but it's often a reaction to something, like maybe a gentle suggestion of, hey, are you using your AoE combo? Maybe they don't even have a button on their bar. That's happened to me before. And they get offended, they get really defensive all of a sudden, thinking, oh my god, I have been perceived, like they just noticed something about me that's not perfect. I hate this, I'm angry. Like some people really will fly off the handle just from something gentle like that, like a gentle advice like that, and their ego can take over and they start power tripping. Like a healer stands there not healing, oh, that particular guy, screw that one guy, right? Like, I've seen this happen. Things can go south real fast when ego gets in the way of listening. Like you are going to have a real bad time in any group content if you cannot set your ego aside even for a moment, even at the basic, most casual level. And then, of course, in harder content, in extreme trials, in savage raids, even ultimates, there's obviously much more social pressure, which all layers on top of that foundation of being able to listen, being able to take advice, and be humble, not half-assing it or giving 40% effort to get by one day because you felt lazy, right? It's like in a hard content, in these more high-end scenarios, it is whole assing it to the best of your ability, going whole ass on there, because there's 7 other people depending on you. So a minute ago, I talked about time commitments and how in solo content, you're not beholden to anyone else's schedule. Like, it's completely up to you, which is one of the beautiful things about solo content. That's why I enjoy it so much. But there is this other extreme where a lot of times in the hardcore setting, you are very much beholden to a set schedule where you have agreed to meet at certain days and certain times. And that is the sacrifice that you make for a very advanced and rewarding social experience. Like everybody getting together and killing a boss that is hard in an organized way. It's a whole new level of satisfaction that comes from cooperating with other people, everybody giving their best effort. But that does come at the cost of some of that freedom, But I have heard people say, even talking about extreme trials and savage, like, I won't go out of my way to try hard because this is my relaxation time. But I do think that in the setting of an extreme trial or savage, like in this high-end content where your mistakes matter to the group, refusing to try or improve at all is griefing the team, honestly. Like there are situations where your straight up refusal to learn a mechanic because it's not relaxing for you can wipe the raid and waste everybody's time. So if you want that, please, please, please consider joining a casual static or an FC where everybody's on the same page, has a similar mindset as you, or do some more chill content like roulettes, like alliance raids, maybe even casual PvP, like just out of respect for other people's time. Because I feel like very often raiders are stereotyped as sweaty nerds who just care way too much and they're asking so much, too much, like they're elitist jerks. And yes, those people are most certainly out there. But I think nowadays there's also a huge number of people who play the game and literally have only like 2 or 3 hours to play. Like they've got kids, they got a full-time job, and they're just trying to make the most at the little chunk of playtime that they have in their day. I think it would be really helpful if more people would remember that and consider that when they go into the group content in general. Like you have to accommodate other people. You cannot always expect to be accommodated. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been into a Party Finder group for a savage content or extreme trial, and there's somebody who just lied about how far they were in the fight, expecting a carry. Like it doesn't fly. Like it usually doesn't work. It's usually pretty obvious, and everybody ends up being really frustrated. The fact is, when the stakes are higher and there's more responsibility on every person as part of that social pressure, like that expectation, everybody has their hands full with their own problems. Sometimes I feel like maybe people do not always give their best effort or try harder because they feel like they have to be perfect, and they're never going to be perfect, so why bother, right? But you really do not have to be perfect at the game to work with other players to clear hard content. Okay, like you do not even have to be amazing to clear savage content. You just have to be all right. Okay, you have to be able to ask yourself, how was that wipe my fault? Could it have been my fault? Like, how can I do this mechanic better? What do I not understand? You have to be able to ask yourself these questions because and it's not always going to be relaxing in this high-end setting. A lot of times that relaxation is not going to come until the boss is dead and you can like unclench your cheeks. Now, I've said that very high-end content also comes with a high level of expectation from other people, of needed commitment and patience with other people, but I also think that those expectations should not go unsaid. I think nowhere is this more important than in high-end content, because whenever you look at, casual content, it is generally understood that it is not something you really need to min-max for. You don't usually need to you don't ever really need to gate going into an alliance raid behind like whatever the mandatory item level is that you need to queue for it in Duty Finder. Like, that's pretty much all handled by the Duty Finder. It's not that serious. It's pretty chill. But whenever it comes to something like a high-end content, you need to be able to make those expectations very clear to the player. And I think that we often see huge problems in the raiding scene whenever those expectations are not well communicated, because everybody has a different play style, everybody has different priorities. And while you can expect that there will be a lot that you will need to do to work with the team in the best way that you can and provide the best value you can to the team, every team might have different rules on that. So that's why I think it's important to try to make your party finder listings very clear about what exactly you're looking for in the player, what strats you're going to use, how far you are in the fight. Generally, people have a pretty good at doing that, but then again, there are people who sometimes try to bypass those clearly set boundaries and restrictions and try to say, oh, I'm actually on phase 2 or 3, but they're not. They're on phase 1 and they're trying to get a carry. As part of accepting the responsibility that comes with doing high-end content, you also need to respect the need, not just to listen, but to communicate well. So as the game becomes more solo friendly and we start to see different kinds of soloable activities being added to the game as new features, like Island Sanctuary, like Criterion Dungeons, I think it's helpful to think about why you would choose to do one type of content over another. Like, why would you choose to do a solo content? What sort of attitude would you need to take into, or could you take into a solo content, and what sort of freedom and expectations are there versus what kinds of freedom and expectations is there in more casual content or more high-end content? What sort of communication do you need, and what is the one foundational principle that can ensure that you're probably going to do fairly well in group content? To me, I think that that is being able to be humble. Like I said a lot of times in this video, being able to just set your ego aside and listen and take advice. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon or on Twitch. You can also support the channel for free just by clicking the subscribe button or by sharing this video with your fellow warriors of light. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.